Hello guys and gamers. This is how to make a weirwood tree for the Song of Fire and Ice. It's a great model and it's lots of fun. It took me about 3 hours to make this model. This is what the finished tree looks like. You can have many different faces and different trees. First thing I did was I took a scrap piece of 1/4 inch plywood. You could use masonite. You could use just about any kind of material. You don't want to use foam because it's got to sit in the oven. I then took a leftover closet dowel that I had taken out of one of my closets and cut it about 4.5 inches. Now you don't have to do this, but I took my table saw and set the blade at 1/8 inch, and then I ran the dowel, turning it several times to make little slots to help hold the clay easier and to stick in wires so I don't have to use as much clay. But you don't have to do that if you don't have a table saw or a scriber saw. You can, with masonite, you can actually sit there and just cut it several times with a razor blade and then break it off, and you'll have uh, a look, but you want it irregular. Next thing I did was I took a drywall screw. I kind of countersunk the opposite side so it sit uh, flat and wouldn't make a little bump. Then I took some glue and put it in the center and put the piece on and drilled it on and let it dry. Once it was dry, I took my drill and drilled several holes on the top to insert the branches. Now I had gotten some wire, it's aluminum wire you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it comes in a roll for about $10. I had purchased this to make fencing for my zombie game, and so I had leftover, but you could use wire coat hangers, you could use lots of different wires. You probably don't want an insulated wire because it might melt in the oven. I filled each hole with glue after I drilled it about a good inch and a half down, and then I stuffed these wires until they barely would fit. The last wire using a pair of pliers to kind of shove it down in place and kind of lock it in. I also took, because I have the slots, I also took some E6000 glue and glued it in the slot and then put in wires all around the outside of the tree so that they would be even. But if you don't have the slots, you could still do that, but you would use wire and glue to hold it in place instead of slots. Even though I have the slots, you'll see I used florist wire on the bottom and the top to lock it in place, and then I put some dabs of glue around everything so that once it's all dry and I start bending those wires, they won't come popping out. So you need that several layers of the florist wire to keep it very tight. Then I started bending the branches in different shapes to spread out the tree. And once I did that, I started wiring them together wherever they came together. So they're wide at the base, and then they start getting thinner as they go out. To once it's filled in with the putty, it'll look like a natural branch progression. After that, I wired everything all the way around. Each branch is wired to the next branch to the next branch, crisscrossing, so that the whole thing is supported. I've found in the past trees that didn't have these web of wires would easily come apart, especially when you're transporting it from the game store and back. So it's important to have these support wires all around. Most of them you'll see are get covered up. Then comes the fun part where you get out the Sculpey. I bought a pound at $14, and then I and 99 cents at Hobby Lobby, and then I pulled up my 40% discount that you can get every day off the on your phone, and so it was like $8 for the Sculpey 1 pound, and I ended up using it all pretty much. If you want to look at different faces, you can go to Google weirwood trees in Google Images, and there's several images of different weirwood tree faces. I looked at several to get my inspiration, and then I kind of made my own. The way you do the branches is to take the Sculpey and spread it out on a flat surface, and then I cut the edges so that it's a strip, and I take my knife and I slide under the whole thing to pick it up into a long slab, and then I wrap that slab around the um, tree branches. Notice that one branch is straight. I have a pair of pliers that I'll bend them more into natural shapes as I start applying the Sculpey and looking at the tree and trying to get a feeling of a tree look. Just keep squeezing them around the wires until you don't see the branch wires anymore. The support wires, the thinner wires, you go around them. They will cut right through the thing, and then you just smush it tighter, and they start disappearing as you do this. It took the entire pound. I started running out right at the end, and I actually had to start stealing some Sculpey from different parts of the tree to finish the last parts of it. I also took a knife and made little sliding marks up and down to make that bark feel. So just take little slits up and down, just keep going all around the tree, on the branches. I didn't do it on the roots. I left the roots a smooth surface and part of the face smooth, and then everything else I made a bunch of little lines um, to make a bark type of look. You bake it in the oven. It took 35 minutes for mine due to the thickness at certain points. I think it's 15 minutes per quarter inch. You never go above 275 degrees, and that's why it's important to use the right materials for a base so you don't burn it or melt it. If you do use mat board or something for the base, or I wouldn't use foam board because it'll melt. But mat board would work. You probably want to put a little aluminum foil around the bottom of the mat boil so it doesn't get as quite as hot. After that, you spray it. Your base coat. You want your base coat always darker than your dry brush coat. I've chose a medium gray for mine, and but you could have gone with brown or in several other wood-like colors. Then I took some off-white and started dry brushing it. You can see the small brush I used just to get into all those spots, especially where the wires are. And I had to keep going back and forth and looking at the tree, standing back a few inches, re dry brushing areas. to get the look I wanted. Once I've done that, I took white glue. It's actually showing tacky glue in the background, but I used white glue and filled it in all the between the roots because the roots are uh, dried sculpty on the wood and it doesn't really stick that good. So you kind of have to lock it in with some glue. And I just pretty much made pools of glue between all the roots. And then when it started getting tacky, I just smushed different flocking material down into the pool of glue in the middles and added a few little odds and ends to give it some variation. I also took a fine brush and took a dark red to make the bleeding marks on the eyes and mouth. Now, while I was listening to a podcast on uh, tactics on the Song of Fire and Ice, I had taken strips of two different color uh, construction. It wasn't really construction paper, it was a thicker paper I got at Hobby Lobby on sale for I think like 40 cents a piece. I got a dark red and a lighter red, and I made these strips the length of the leaf, and I would take 3 or 4 strips together, hold them, clamp them with one hand, and with my other hand use a scissors just to cut a leaf shape, uh, putting my scissors over the and leaves over the trash can when I was cutting scrap, and then putting it over that box when I was wanting the leaves to drop into the box. I then took a hot glue and started gluing the leaves. I did a lot of clusters, groups of leaves that, as you can see, there's groups of leaves. This is top view of the tree. I probably would have made the leaves smaller now that I've made the tree and looked at it. I think the leaves should have been a little bit smaller, but I still have several more leaves that I'm going to add to the tree, but I got um, tired of doing it and I'd run out of the podcast. Here's a back side of the tree. As you can see, I still need to fill in on the back side. Also, the little support wires, I usually glue across them a set of leaves from the two edges. Sometimes I will leave a little bit of wire showing, as in this case, but most of them, no one ever even notices the support wires because most of the leaves cover it up. And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial. Please like my page and subscribe. You know, if I start getting enough people, YouTube will give me some supply money for more crafts. Thanks and have a wonderful day.